So what do you mean? What do you mean that it can do a lot of? I don't quite understand that. So you made the case that we suffer from this frustrating bandwidth limitation, and that the computer intelligence that we're interacting with is going to be able to take the delay that's associated and that underlies that frustration and do a lot of different calculations with it. It's going to be able to fill in that gap. So what do you think? I don't understand your insight into what the implications of that are.
They're both positive and negative. The negative is if AI continues on its path to be as fast and as powerful as it is right now, and that arc doesn't seem to be slowing down, within that half second, a universe could take place within AI. It could be calculating all of your actions like a chess game, and it could be making remediations to those actions. And it can become beyond anything Orwell would have ever thought of. In fact, it came up to me as an idea of what the new Orwell would look like with an AI technology that is predicting basically everything you're going to do within every word you say.
Well, my brother-in-law and I talked years ago about Skynet, among other things. And, he told me one time, he said, those science fiction movies where you see the military robots shoot and miss? He said, they'll never miss. And here's why. Because not only will they shoot where you are, they'll shoot at the 50 locations they calculate that are most probable that you will duck towards. And which is exact analog of what you're describing, which is that
that's a brilliant insight. Absolutely.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's so interesting too, because it also points to this truth that, we think of time as finite. And time is finite because we have a sense of duration and a limitation on our computational speed. But if there's no limit on computational speed, which would be the case if computers can get faster and larger indefinitely, which they could, because the limit of that would be that you'd use every single molecule in the entire cosmos as a computational resource. That would mean that in some ways there's an infinite amount of computing time between each segment of duration. So there's no limit at all to the degree to which time can be expanded, which is also a very strange concept, is that this computational intelligence will mean that at every given moment, I think this is what you're alluding to, is that we'll really have an infinity. We'll have an infinity of possibility between each moment, right?
And you would want that power to be yours and local.
Yeah. Let's talk about your gadget, because you started to develop this. Have you been 3D printing these things? Have I got that right?
So we're building the corpus of 3D printing models, right? So the idea is once it understands, and this is a process of training the AI using large language models again, to look at 3D documents and 3D files, put it that way, and to try to break down what is the structure, how does something build based on what the statistical model is putting together. So then you could just present with a textual document. I'd like something that's going to be able to fit into this space. Well, that's typing. Well, the next step is you just put a video camera towards it, and it will design it immediately. Within seconds, you will have a design that you can choose from it. That's not far off at all. It's just a matter of encoding that particular database and building upon it. And so, that's one of the directions.
Okay, so this local AI you want to build. So let me backtrack a bit, because I want to make sure I get this exactly right. So the first thing that you proposed was that it will be in people's best interest to have an AI system that's personalized. That'll protect them against all the AI systems that aren't personalized, but not only personalized, but local. And so that would be to some degree detachable from the interconnected web, at least sporadically detachable. Okay, and that AI system will be something you can carry around locally, so it'll be a gadget like a phone, and it will also record everything that you experience, everything that you read, everything that you see. It'll know you inside and out and backwards, which will also imply, interestingly enough, that it will be able to calculate the optimal zone of proximal development for your learning. Like Bjorn Lomborg has already reviewed evidence suggesting that if you supply kids in the developing world with an iPad, essentially, that can calculate their zone of proximal development in relationship to, say, advancing their literacy ability, their ability to identify words and to understand text, and that it teaches at that level that kids can progress with an hour of training a day, which is dirt cheap, by the way, they can progress the equivalent of 3 years for each year of education. And that's with an hour of exposure. Now, the system you're describing, man, it could be driving learning at an optimized rate in multiple dimensions, mathematical, semantic, skill-based, conceptual, simultaneously
memory
for hours. Yeah, memory training for hours a day. Like, one of the things that appalls me about our education system is with the computer technology we have now, every child should be an expert word and letter recognizer, and they should be able to, say, read music, because a computer can teach a kid how to automatize perception with extreme precision and accuracy, way better than a human teacher can manage. But we haven't capitalized on that technology at all. But the technology that you're describing, like, it'll be able to figure out at what level of comprehension you're capable of reading. Then it can calculate what book you should read next that would slightly exceed that level of comprehension. And it'll just keep you on that edge, in that zone, nonstop.
Absolutely.
So this little gadget, how far along are you with regards to its design?
I would say all of the different pieces. I'll add one more element to it, which I think you'll find very fascinating, and that's human telemetry, galvanic, heart rate variability.
Are you doing eye tracking?
Eye tracking. All of these things can be implemented. Brain, according to how sophisticated you want to get, different brainwave functionality. Paul Ekman's work on micro movements and facial expression, both outwardly at the world you're seeing and inwardly about your own face. So you can start seeing the power it has. It'll be able to know whether or not you're being congruent. If you're saying, I really love this, well, if your telemetry is saying that you don't, it already knows where your congruencies are. So this is why it's got to be private. This is why it's got to be encrypted. Right. It's got to be personal.
So it'll have an understanding that'll approximate mind reading.
Yes, and it will know you better than any significant other. Nobody would know you better. And so with that, you now have amplification. You're now a superpower.